These two stories are just rumors, but they still are freaky. You have to live in Sacramento to know about the places I'm gonna be talking about. Do you ever drive down Freeport Boulevard, going through that street where the airport is? It's just really scary because there's no streetlights on both sides of the roads, and there's just a bunch of rubbish and land. It gets pretty dark there at nighttime. My cousin worked at McDonald's at Pocket View near I-5. One night he was getting off of work late. After work he gets picked up by his parents, but that night his ride was super late, so he decided to just walk home. He lives over by Florin Road. It's about a block away, but 1 mile long. He decided that he was just gonna walk back home that night. On his way home, he took Freeport Boulevard. As he walked home, he came across two dudes walking up from behind him. They eventually crossed each other, and one of the dudes said hello in Hmong to my cousin. My cousin also replied back. When my cousin got home, he ran into his mom, and his mom was just about to leave to go pick up my cousin. He said that it was okay and that he just decided to walk back home. The mom lectured him not to do that anymore. She then went on to tell him that some teenagers from Burbank High School were once coming back from a party. They were drunk and driving when they suddenly crashed into a pickup truck on Freeport towards Meadowview. They eventually lost control of the car and went onto the side of the road, and the truck flipped, killing everybody. My cousin's mom didn't really know the race of those teenagers, but at Burbank High School, it is one of the schools with lots and lots of Hmong people in South Sacramento. That fact made him have second thoughts of the dudes he saw on Freeport when he was walking home that night. The second story was told by my uncle during a funeral on Freeport. It just so happens that there's also a Hmong funeral home on Freeport. In the early 2000s, a Mexican guy was working there as a janitor. He was doing his thing cleaning late at night because there was going to be a holding tomorrow. He made his way into the big room, the room where the dead body is usually held and displayed for people to come. He saw a lady in Hmong clothes eating the rice and chicken left for the dead. He just thought that it was just one of those people that came earlier to prep for the funeral tomorrow morning. He said something to her, and when she noticed him in the room, she looked up. She freaked out and dropped her plate and ran away. But when she ran into the coffin that was displayed in there. This lady was a Yang, and she came from a family that weren't clean. Basically, in the Hmong culture, these are families that, when they pass away, their spirits linger. I live in the Sacramento area, but I will not tell you which side I'm from. About a week ago, my girls and I decided to hit up the club for her 21st birthday. As we got there, we bought a couple of shots and had our mini circle going on. It started to get a little freaky with this cute Mexican dude who had been eyeing me the whole entire time. I ended up sleeping over at his place that night. The next morning when I woke up, he disappeared. I called out for him, but he was nowhere to be found. I was confused, and so I put on my clothes and decided to walk out into the backyard. I saw this tree with a cross on top of it. I thought to myself that it was strange. Why would there be a cross on a tree? Isn't it usually put on the ground? I brushed it off and started looking around. I then saw this picture of him and his wife. She looked so beautiful, and so I was guessing that they were divorced. I walked back inside and I thought that I should just leave since he already left. As I got out of the house, this old man came up to me and told me that no one has been living in that house for 2 years now because a Mexican man and his wife both died in there because he goes out too much, and he eventually strangled his wife in their backyard. Her spirit came back and haunted him to death. So now they both have nowhere to go but to stay in the house together. I didn't believe in him, and I started to walk to the bus area. I thought about it for a moment, and all of a sudden I felt a cold breeze on my neck. I have never encountered something like this before in my entire life. As I hopped onto the buswoman asked me how long have we been together. I looked at her with confusion and ignored her comment. Later on that night, when I was going to sleep, I saw him at the foot of my bed. He told me that he had to leave with his wife and he was sorry for what he has done to me. I then woke up and left my lamp on the entire night. This isn't so scary, but I just thought I'd share my first experience.
你叫你摸不来呢？这个这给我不来这种呢，个这么人话这，mon人话这，mon做个得给吧，个得给赔呢。
Interested in sharing your stories? Submit them to HmongChronicles@gmail.com or in the description below. Here is the next story. Thank you. One night, a friend of mine was hanging out at her ex's house for a kickback. They hung out in the backyard, and as we know, a lot of Hmong folks have their own little garden in their backyard. While hanging out, my friend suddenly notices one of her ex's friend by a crop of corns waving at her to come here. Being used to this place and with all the people around the backyard hanging out, she didn't think anything of it but a friend playing a prank. She went to look for the friend, casually walking through the corns looking for them. As she got to the end of the yard, she noticed a small little hut. The hut was built like a gazebo so you could see inside of it, and she didn't notice anybody sitting there. This was when, all of a sudden, she saw a figure at the corner of her eyes. She thought that her eyes were just playing tricks on her. My friend ignored what had just happened and went back to hang out with the group. As the night ended, my friends were welcome to stay the night since everybody has been drinking. They set up in the living room where they were going to sleep. As my friend was trying to sleep, she laid on one of her sides where she was facing the backyard door. The door didn't have a curtain on it, and the light in the back was still on. The door had a window to it, and as she was falling asleep looking at the window, she suddenly saw the friend that was looking for her behind the door, smiling at her. My friend got terrified and pulled a blanket over her head. At this point, she was in fear and shaking. She peeked out of her blanket to see if the thing was still looking at her. She looked up to the corner of the ceiling right above the backyard door. She saw her friend hanging upside down with the head tilted sideways, smiling at her. It suddenly started crawling on the ceiling towards her direction, and when it got right over her, it dropped. The thing dropped down onto her. She freaked out and started screaming and crying really loud, waking up the entire household from their sleep. They calmed down my friend and asked her what happened. She told them exactly everything that would happen to her. They allowed her to sleep in their room with a Hmong knife under her pillow and a shaman pendant pinned onto her shirt. This was so she could sleep peacefully for that night. Later on, they found out why that happened. The ghost that waved to her changed its looks to deceive her so that she will come looking for it. And because of that, the ghost was able to haunt and terrify her. I live in Sacramento. I'm a housekeeper. I have been working in the hospital for 17 years now. In the fall of 2014, I transferred to the graveyard shift. At first, nothing bothered me. I was comfortable. I knew a lot of people around the hospital, and every night my assigned area I had to clean was the 2-story clinic across the street from the hospital. That fall, on Tuesday night after Thanksgiving break, I went to clean the clinic building. At around 4 a.m., I approached the women's public restroom on the first floor. I propped the door open and went inside to check for supplies. I came out, grabbed supplies, went back and stocked up the restroom. Then I started to squeeze my rag of chemicals as I was getting ready to clean. My work phone rang once. I pulled it out of my top pocket to check, but the number faded. I could hear the faucet water come on while I was still standing out the door. I went on inside and didn't think of anything. The faucet is not a sensor. You have to pull it for it to turn on. I continued my cleaning. I figured that since it was a clinic, nobody dies here. I got to the back of the clinic and I suddenly felt my hair standing on end. as if someone was following me. I got the vacuum and started vacuuming, but I could still feel the hair standing. I wrapped up the cords and put it away in my vacuum. I went back on my way to the hospital. At the hospital, my boss bumped into me and asked how everything looked. I said, "Yeah, everything's good. Why? It's not like someone died there." He said, "Yeah, I'll tell you about it later." I went back on my way to the floors. Most of the staff had already heard about the incident at that clinic. They said that a member came in and shot herself in the bathroom. The nurses and my coworkers advised me, "Sweetie, don't stay over there beyond 2 a.m. because between 2 and 5 a.m. it's the most quiet time in the hospital." The next day and on, my coworkers helped me clean that building for 1 month. Then I started on my own again. 6 months passed since her time of death. I always cleaned that restroom first. Then I went on my way with everything else. I finished the second floor at 1:51 a.m. I was so proud of myself that it wasn't 2 a.m. yet. I threw my trash into the trash cart, put away my cleaning cart, pulled out, and pushed my trash cart out into the waiting area, heading out. Is someone there?" a woman asked in a friendly voice. My hair started to stand on end. I paused, looked at the door as I knew it was locked, and my pockets stuffed with keys and gloves. "Hello?" the woman's friendly voice said as if someone had just approached me. I started shaking, but I knew I had to get out and not come back in. At the entrance, I grabbed my keys shaking, opened the entrance, and rushed my way out. I felt numb. I was so scared to even turn my head. After this day, I was terrified of going back into that building. I had to transfer back to working day shift again. As the Hmong elderly always say, we're Hmong. We are spiritual. The way that person died was raw, so she can't move forward until someone replaces her. And I am not going to be that person. I'm out of there. See ya. This is why I hate hospitals. I got a spooky story to share. I live in North Minneapolis, Minnesota. About 2 weeks ago, my husband's younger brother was going to pick up the third younger brother from work. He took 94 East to come over to Olson Memorial Highway 55. He came upon the intersection at a red light between Golden Valley and Theodore Wirth Park. All of a sudden, he felt very cold and chilly. He turned around to check if any of his windows were open, but he realized that they were tightly shut. Afterwards, he suddenly had a whiff of a smelly, rotten scent inside of his car. He got the chills down his spine and looked into his rearview mirror and noticed a dark figure sitting at the back of his seat. As he turned around, he saw the black figure had some very long black hair covering the entire face. The brother got so scared and lost his spirit at that moment. He screamed and pressed hard on the gas pedal and drove away. As he went past 3 blocks towards Highway 100 towards Golden Valley, the black figure went away. As he got to the workplace that the younger brother was working at, he cried to everybody about what he saw. When he was at home, they had to call us and let us know what happened to him. After a week, we all had to drive over to call back his spirit on that road. One morning, my dad, my 2 brothers, and I decided that we wanted to go hunting for squirrels. Following the week after that, we left early in the morning to go hunting. We split up into 2 pairs after we arrived. While hunting, nothing unusual happened. Maybe it was our luck that day, but we found nothing. Soon, it started to get dark, and we started to converge at the car again. Nothing felt out of the ordinary. It was around 10 p.m. when it got really dark and we arrived at home. Of course, being a Hmong family, we had a small cornfield and farmland in the backyard. My room's window was faced against that field. When we arrived, we started to unpack. I was so tired I decided to go inside my room and change my clothes. My window blind was currently down. My brother came from the backyard and knocked on my window. My window has no screen, so he handed me his bag while he finished up cleaning the coolers. I took the bag and then pulled the blind down again. About 2 or 5 minutes later, there was a knock on the window again. I peeked up from the blind and saw my brother walking away towards the cornfield, which were about 5 feet tall by now. I thought he remembered something and left. About 30 seconds later, when I was starting to leave the room, I heard small rocks being thrown at the window. I thought my brother was playing pranks on me, so I just decided to ignore it. Right when I was about to open my bedroom door to leave, I heard rocks being thrown again. This time, I went and checked. There was nothing. The backyard lights were all turned off, and it was pretty dark outside, with the moon being covered and everything. Even when the moonlight was being lit up again, there was nothing. I turned around, and during that time, I noticed something white flash past my peripheral. I just thought that it was the moonlight and ignored it. Right when I opened my bedroom door, my brother, who I saw go into the field, popped up. I asked him what did he go into the field for. He answered me that he didn't. He was out in the front yard smoking with my older brother for the past few minutes after he handed me the bag. He told me that after he finished cleaning the coolers, no one else was outside. That was when I started to get goosebumps. We checked outside the window, and there were no rocks in the area at all. I was freaked out. My brother told me that I was tired, so my mind was playing tricks on me. I agreed with him because that would calm me down better. After those encounters, nothing else happened. 2 weeks later, I was sleeping at my brother's house. I slept on the second floor. My uncle was playing League of Legends on my computer while I was going to sleep. I started to dream. The dream was very vivid. In my dream, my mom and everybody were over, and they told me to wake up and eat. At first, I just said that I was tired. Then, this time, my mom and my sister came to wake me up. I replied that I would eat later. I was still sleeping. On the third time, my mom, my sister, and my nieces were all there. They all told me to go eat before the food turned cold. I flatly denied again, but this time, they became forceful. They grabbed my legs and they were yanking me while I was grabbing onto the edge of the doors. It was then that they turned into monsters. I'm not going to describe how they looked. I was very scared when that happened. But then a white tiger jumped into my room from the windows and started to bite the monsters. After I was set free, I finally woke up. I was drenched in sweat and shaking like crazy. My uncle turned around and asked if I was okay. I told him that I just had a nightmare. I left the room to grab a drink. I later found some marks on my legs and told my grandma about my dream. She gave me something wrapped in a red pouch in a triangular shape. She said for me to keep it on me at all times until I forgot about it. I did, and my nightmare and everything eventually disappeared. My grandma told me that something wanted to take me along, and if I had agreed to go eat during my dream, I would have been lost. Luckily, the tiger, whoever it was that was guarding me, saved me. My grandma burned incense and joss paper and boiled a chicken to offer to it as respect. Back in Laos, my uncle was already married with kids, but one wife was not enough for him. He went out and found himself a younger woman. During the wedding, his fiance's mom told him that her dowry was $5,000, but at the time my uncle only had $3,000, so they went to the town's mayor for a decision. He was on my uncle's side and granted that he pay what he had, which was $3,000. His mother-in-law was never happy about the payment. 2 weeks later, his mother-in-law passed away from an unknown cause. A few weeks after the funeral, he was already having problems with his new wife. Well, one midnight, he was up late studying while everybody was asleep. He heard the wind pick up and heard footsteps walking outside next to his room. The footsteps came around his house and stopped at the front door. He then heard the front door creak open and the footsteps came in. It limped slowly towards his room, and then he started to smell a rotten stench. All of a sudden, his curtain swung open and he saw his mother-in-law standing at his bedroom door. She was blue, rotten, with maggots crawling all over her face, as if someone threw grains of rice at her face. My cousin couldn't move, not even his eyes were allowed to move. It's as if he was forced to stare into her face of rage. After 5 seconds of being paralyzed, he gathered all of his might and kicked free from the grasp. Bam! He kicked the table so hard that it woke up his wife, and he started to shout like a kid, cowering under the blankets. He screamed so loud that it woke up the entire neighborhood. They came to see what he was doing. He could barely talk, but he told everybody about what he saw. His Laotian neighbors invited him and his wife to go sleep over at their place that night. For the next few weeks, his house smelled of rotten flesh. The shaman performed a ritual and said that his mother-in-law was not happy with the money settlement. It was because of this that she came by to show him how she felt. They moved out of the house and he divorced his new wife a few years later, not because of the incident, but because she was mean, lazy, and blah 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 other reasons.